sometimes I'll have the kids send us updates like, we spoke for 60 minutes in English today or something, and they try to beat the timer the next day, because some of it's just, for some of these children, they just don't have the confidence in that language that is spoken in the school or so spoken from a social. So they go into school and they see the kids, everybody's talking in their language, but the child that's bilingual or multi is trying to digest that language, trying to interpret it and join in. And they may already be anxious to begin with from a social anxiety standpoint. So it's just kind of snowballs. So we have to pull it back, isolate it out, and so forth.
Dr. E, I think it's to do with exposure. So language develops through exposure, accent develops through exposure. And what I love is about the family dynamic approach. We're all in it. It's not just about the child. We really need to stop, taking the focus out of the child. Oh, well, but it's my child that is not speaking. Yes, but children learn through exposure. Children learn through modeling. So if you are from a bilingual background, I do exactly the same. Can you go to the shop and say, right, when we're in the shops and when we're going to the supermarket or when we're going for that walk, we will be speaking English because I also need to practice. You are my teacher, or it's really about I need to use that language. I actually want to share something really personal. I didn't do that to begin with, but we're talking about many years ago. And my oldest son one day said to me, "Oh, Mom, I feel really sad for you." And I said, "Oh, why is that?" And he said, "Oh, because, you must go to work and you don't understand what they're saying and you don't speak English." And I went, "Oh my God." He had never heard me speak English. I mean, he doesn't have SN, but that was quite an observant thing. And he thought that I was only speaking Italian, but he obviously realized that nobody else around me did speak Italian, which they didn't, obviously. And I thought, how observant. That really made me change to make them realize that I also spoke of the place where we lived.
Yeah, the kids are like, they say it the way it is.
Yeah, but then if you're multilingual, bilingual, and also you don't have the opportunity to use English like in school because you can't, because the words are blocked because that muscle is not quite yet developed and you don't feel that comfortable, then if you don't practice, if you don't use it, you lose it. So that's why as parents is not about let's force it, let's embrace it. So you can make lists, you can, games, there are so many games that we play. And that's exactly as you said, reading, because reading is decoding, is not creating, is there. And you're showing that you're putting yourself, you're doing something that they're also doing it too. Yeah, I definitely think.
Again, for our listeners, and respecting the stages on the social communication bridge and understanding that even with these strategies, the child still may be bridging, whether using an intermediary. A really big
Yeah.
strategy for us, for me, in terms of transition is because a lot of kids become professional mimes. They're very comfortable non-verbally. Is that transitional stage 2. And so sounds and shaping sounds into words for some of our bilingual children, especially if they're not so confident in that other language, using the sounds to words approach is very helpful because it is breaking words down. And that has been a very successful type strategy to work with bilingual children. And with little kids, it's just fun use of sounds, shaping fun use and making silly sounds and putting the sounds together. It doesn't matter what language you're speaking, frankly, everyone's on the same playing field when you're using goofy sounds and putting them together and making fake words. And now you've got the even playing field. So there's lots of creative ways that teachers and parents can integrate these types of treatment strategies during get-togethers. And even like something, parents are facilitators for us, right? They facilitate the next stage of social communication because we can't just rely on children to go in to school and say, okay, this is what you need to do to help me speak in a message, or during a get together, I need to do 1, 2, and 3. Yes, when a child's an older teen, they can do that and we work with them to do it. But parents are the main facilitators. That's why educating parents is so critical, just how they use their language around the child. Tell your friend what where we're going on vacation, this open-ended, thought-provoking situation that they are not prepared for. So all of those concepts of write to read and, the write and read approach, the script approach, asking more choice questions, direct questions, giving them time to respond, re-asking the question, maybe leaning in, this or that, tell me. I mean, all of these strategies still work and they are utilized with bilingual, multilingual children. So I want our listeners to understand that social communication bridge is just such a critical component. So let me ask you off the record: do you use the bridge at all, or you're familiar with my bridge?
So I'm very familiar and I love the idea of the bridge. I suppose I use Maggie Johnson's approach, which is the stages of confident speaking. So it's basically 8 stages. So it's just broken down in further little steps. So what you call the an intermediary for us would be the bridge. So it would be, I'm happy to have my voice heard, but I'm speaking to my mom. So the idea is the same, that we want to teach both children and parents that there are little tiny little steps that allow us to track where we're at and where we're going. It's like moving. But for me, the steps, the family, and moving and sounds, it all comes all together, because everything that you've mentioned has a three-dimensional aspect to it, because I always add movement to it. So that means making sounds and jumping, making sounds or reading, and we are on a swing. And, I always suggest to get one of those swings that you can hang up from the ceilings. We do very specific brain movements that will allow the brain stems to connect with other aspects of our brain and our body, to allow us then the voice to come in a specific way without thinking about the voice. And then that becomes the exposure. So I absolutely want people to understand you've got one language, you've got two languages, you've got three languages. But you've got to adapt everything that you've learned, everything that you hear, in all the languages, because you want them to have that fluidity, to go in and out of both languages with that confidence. And so that's really, really important.
So it's interesting when you say one language, two, three, I multiply that, because what I find happens in some families is they combine the languages. So now they're combining, let's say, Italian and Spanish to have, and they're mixing languages, and then children are mixing languages, and that's what the children are hearing.
Yeah.
So it's multiple languages that are often spoken in some of these households, or they're speaking one language all the time. And so it is working with the whole family. So as far as teachers and school staff to understand the aspect of bilingualism and SM, what would be your kind of go-to statement for a school that has a bilingual selectively mute child to be able to approach that child? What would you say?
I would say that time is pivotal. And if the child is not speaking or communicating within the first 3 months, I always have a list of what communications I'm expecting them to develop and to use, and not to skip the 3 months. Especially if the child has moved in from a different country, we can maybe stretch it to 6 months, but I don't want them to think the child will grow out of it, because silence, no matter what it is never about defiance. So I really teach them to observe how the child generally is communicating. So also we want to make sure that the child is understanding. So that initial information about the child is pivotal, because the teachers might recognize the difference between learning a language, or like in my case, is my child was already exposed to 2 languages. She could speak already 2 languages. It's not that she didn't speak, English because she didn't want to, because she wasn't exposed enough to English. It was just because a child doesn't speak doesn't mean that they don't understand. And just because that they're not talking, it doesn't mean that they don't want to try. So there is always a happy medium. So for me, one of the first things to say is, let's create visual routines Would the child let you know where you're at and what you're doing? Create a system of friendship, which is super important, what you would define, think is the buddy system, and consistent expectations. So give them that control. And I would add movements. Anything that you do, especially here in the UK, children learn for 10, 15 minutes and then they move about. And fourth and not last is to make spaces for all languages, to celebrate the fact that maybe in the classroom, and nowadays it happens all the time, there are children that also speak other languages. So it's not just tolerated, but is accepted and is part of the classroom or the school.
Yeah, no, those are all, just fabulous recommendations. In the States, we have IEPs and 504s.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that. But do they come straight away? Because that's what it is for us. There's a very specific process.
It's a specific process, and if you're in a private school, they don't have them. You'd have to go into the public school to get either the services. Testing, I mean, a lot of families choose private testing and then bring it to the school, which is why testing is such a big part of what we do at the Smart Center, because a lot of times they can't assess these children. They're mute. They don't have the skills and background to know how to assess a mute child. And a lot of times I will see like IEP evaluations where it'll be like, wasn't able to assess speech and language, wasn't able to assess the expressive language. But the parent said this. So this is why testing children, in my opinion, for kids that screen for speech and language or screen for learning processing difficulties, et cetera, are so important.